Hello, Rob.
Hey, Eldon, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing tonight?
Fat and happy.
Sorry to hear about Jeff. Do we know anything more?
No, not yet. Cody's going to fill us in when she finds out something.
Okay.
Well, Donnie, I think we're one council member short.
Who's that?
Well, there's only 3 council members and the mayor on the call right now.
Oh, Brian hadn't joined?
I see his window coming in.
I'm here. I'm just muted and blocked from my video.
Okay. So we do have enough.
You're unmuted.
I don't see Warren.
Warren, I just saw Warren at ribbon cutting. He'll be on in a minute.
That one, they're gonna ask to table it. They did advertise for a public hearing, but they're also gonna have a public hearing in August. Nobody's out there. And then this one, no public hearing, we've already had it. So it's just a vote tonight. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to go ahead and broadcast so people can join. We are broadcasting. I'm going to go ahead and record to the cloud. So we're starting to record the meeting. We are now recording to the cloud and we are broadcasting. It's 6:59.
Y'all hear me?
Yes.
Good deal.
Hear me?
Yes. Well, we can't hear Tracy.
The races.
Colin, how's the beach?
Not much.
Ellington Bates.
Is he at PD?
Yes.
Storms right now.
Oh, really?
Bates, okay. Ellington Bates is being allowed to talk.
Yeah, I assume he's here
He's here.
for the prayer.
He's muted himself. So he'll need to unmute.
I'm now unmuted.
Okay,
You ready?
you're good. We are 7 o'clock.
All right, we'll get started. Before we call the meeting to order, we'll ask Rob to lead us in the pledge.
All right, here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Pastor Bates, are you on?
Yes, sir.
All right, if you'll give us a prayer, I appreciate it, and it's good to hear you.
It's good to be here. It's good to be among such an august body. We are doing what God has called us to do, and that is from government perspective to restrain evil. So I am so glad that you guys will start off with a word from the Lord. So let's pray. Father God, we thank you and we praise you. Thank you for your grace and your mercy. Thank you for these, your people. You know them by name. You know each one that you've assigned to the task of doing something in this great city. And God, we thank you that you have enabled us to come together even under these conditions. And I pray right now that your Holy Spirit shall lead and guide, shall touch and show us the way that you would have this city to operate. And I pray right now that we do all of the things that you have in your will for the city of Woodstock. We thank you and we praise you. Bless us now, God. We do not just have a form of godliness denying your power. We know that all power is in your hands. And we thank you and we praise you. Bless now. It's in the mighty and matchless name of Jesus Christ we do pray. And the saints of God said amen. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.
How's the church doing?
We're doing just fine. We are still streaming live. We have not yet reopened, obviously due to the situation and the circumstances that are prevailing.
Okay, well, hope to see you back soon.
Yes, sir. Now, let me just give a shout out to Chief Moss and the Woodstock Police Department. I just want to say great job from the Woodstock Police Department. Great job. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for saying that. All right. This is the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Woodstock for Monday, July 13th, 2020. And let me say to those council members and staff members that were at the ribbon cutting, I apologize. I got busy with something at home and it just completely slipped my mind. So I'm sorry if you had to wait around for me not to show up. First order of business is the announcements. Is Colin on?
I am on. Can y'all hear me? I had a
Yes.
connection issue. It dropped me off, but I think I am back.
All right, go right ahead.
Excellent. Announcements for July 13, 2020. The Woodstock Farm Fresh Market is open every Saturday from 8:30 a.m., I believe that should say, to noon on Market Street in downtown. The market features about 40 vendors who are required to grow or produce at least 80% of their items locally. The City of Woodstock has announced that 2 upcoming events in the Woodstock Summer Concert Series must be postponed until the 2021 season due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The Ultimate Queen Celebration, starring Mark Martell, on July 31st, and the Steep Canyon Rangers concert on August 8th will both be postponed until the 2021 season. Did you replace your American flag recently? Dispose of worn out flags in the American Legion drop box in the park at City Center. That concludes our announcements.
Thank you, sir. Consent agenda items 1 through 14. Does any council member wish to consider one separately? Excuse me.
Yes, sir. I'd like to pull items 11 and 12.
All right, 11 and 12. Anything else?
I'm Mike, Mayor. I'm trying to figure out the number.
I couldn't hear you, Warren.
1 second, I'm trying to figure out which item number. Item number 7.
7?
Yes, please.
Okay. Anything else? I'll need a motion to pull 7, 11, and 12.
You have a motion.
Second.
And a Warren second. Further discussion? Roll call vote. Ward 1.
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Going back to the consent agenda, items 1 through 6, 8 through 10, and 13 and 14. I'll need a motion to approve.
You have a motion to approve consent agenda items except for 7, 11, and 12.
Easier than the way I said it. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is that David?
No.
Warren.
Warren, sorry. We have a second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Ward 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Going back to item 7, which is waive the public input meeting for BJ and AS and Lewis LLC case 106-20. Questions, Warren?
I was just curious. It says that time is of the essence, but is there any extenuating circumstances beyond that as to why we should waive public input?
Brantley is in the chambers. Brantley, if you'll address.
Yes, sir. So this is actually the Culver's project located on the corner of Highway 92 and Nice Road. The project is currently in plan review with Cherokee County. The franchisee has elected to pursue annexation with the city. And because he's in plan review with the county, he's on a very tight timeline to deliver land disturbance permits and construct the project. And since it's the corner of Nice and 92, it's that northwest corner. There's no subdivisions or residential property that abut it. It's actually the site where the Searles project was located. And actually, we, in the intervening time, since the Culver's franchisee has come forward, another company has come forward to rezone the neighboring property, seeking a senior living project as well. So it's completely surrounded by what I would call commercial multifamily potential and no platted subdivision. Considering the timeline, considering it's sealing an important gap in the city in accordance with the annexation policy, and that we're trying to aim to get an LDP out the door September 1, that's why we're recommending waiving the public input requirement.
Okay. Have you had a chance to review the plans that were submitted to the county?
I'm sorry, sir, I couldn't hear you.
Have you had a chance to see the plans that were submitted to the county?
We do have, they have submitted the same site plan to the city, and it's in plan review right now.
Okay.
And provide that to you and the city council.
Okay. No concerns?
Are you okay, Warren?
I'm sorry.
You have no concerns with what you've seen currently?
I'm really sorry. The audio in here is not great today. I'm not sure what you're asking. I'm sorry.
I was asking if you had any concerns with the plans that you've seen.
No, I think it's a solid project, and we've actually we're close to being done with our first plan review, and we feel like it's in a really good spot right now.
Anything else, Warren?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Hey, Donnie, I got to recuse myself from the next two. I got a conflict, so I'm going to
That's
step
fine.
out, okay?
Well, we still need to approve this one, David.
Oh, that's right. Never mind.
Yeah.
My bad.
I'm sorry. Hold on a minute, Cody.
No, go ahead.
All right. I'll need a motion on item 7.
You have a motion to approve?
Second.
Warren motion and a Rob second. Any further discussion? Roll call. Ward 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Hi.
Motion carries 6-0. Okay, David, you're free to go. All right, item 11 and 12. Rob Hogan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much. For agenda item 4.11 concerns Rote Mill Road project change orders. We request council approval for 3 change orders on the Rote Mill Road project and associated scope change to utilize unspent under budgeted funds to expand the project scope to include the northern addition from Cardinal Drive to Inwood Walk and the southern addition from Angela Court through Woodstock Elementary School entrance. Thank you. So, as you can see in the agenda package, there's a great amount of detail. We were pleasantly surprised in the early bidding process with substantially lower costs than originally projected. And therefore, we're able to expand the project scope considerably and still stay under budget. Beyond the original Cardinal Drive to Northtown. So these 3 change orders to existing contracts have all been verified as same price per materials. It allows the extension to the north, it allows the extension to the south, and it includes a school bus turn lane and substantial additional features. You'll see in the agenda packet a number of financial analysis of the project itself, as well as illustrations and the engineered drawings. And I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Anybody have anything?
No, sir.
All right. If not, I'll entertain a motion on item 11
You have a motion to approve.
and a second.
Second.
Was that Warren?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, Ward 1,
Aye.
2 abstention, 3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0 with 1 abstaining. Item 12, Rob?
Yes, sir. Item 4.12 is the Main Brook Turn Lane Project change order. We request council approval for 1 change order on the Main Brook Turn Lane project and the associated scope change to utilize unspent funds from other projects to expand the project scope to include significant improvements in the northeast section of the project that enables a more natural 180-foot straight edge beyond the intersection. The original engineered drawings were sufficient and they were according to the guidelines of engineering guidelines nationally and by the state. However, upon the actual work and construction, we noticed that this additional improvement would be a considerable enhancement of safety because it allows for part of the curve just beyond the intersection to be cut more into a straight line. And so we suggested that the engineer go back, look at it again, and they came up with new drawings that incorporated that straight edge. And I'll take any questions that you might have.
Anybody have anything? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
You have a motion to approve.
Second.
Tracy, second. Further discussion? Roll call vote, Ward 1.
Aye.
2 abstains, 3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
and 6.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0 with 1 abstention. Cody, we'll let him know. We're letting David know to come on back. David, are you there yet?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Item 5-1 is vote on case A 102-19 South Cherokee Lane rezoning and variances. We have, this is a public hearing. It was advertised as such, but we're going to have another one if you decide to table this until the August meeting. And I can't remember which date that would be. Cody, do you remember?
Say that one more time.
What's that?
For the date for the public hearing,
Yeah.
it's August?
We're advertising for August 10th.
10th. Okay,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you. All right, there's a request to table this.
Have a motion to table?
Was that Warren?
Second.
Donnie,
Second.
Donnie, this is Eldon. We should ask if there's anybody who is there to speak that if we had a public hearing announced.
Yeah, no, there's not. I've already been informed, Eldon.
Okay.
If that's changed, y'all let me know, Rob or Brantley.
I just want to make sure we had that on the record that we offered.
Okay. I don't think anybody's walked in.
No, there's no one out there.
Okay, who made the motion? I'm sorry.
I believe it was Warren and Tracy second, I think.
Warren and Tracy second.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, Ward 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Going down to item 5-2 is a vote on case Z 132-20, North Main Mixed Use Condition Amendment and Variances. It's got Nawana's name on it, and this is not a public hearing.
Thank
Nawana?
you, Mayor. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Jeff, if I could have you go to the next slide for me. Could I have you zoom out on the screen or either go to full screen because some of the text is getting cut off? Okay, thank you for doing that. So this is case Z 132-20, North Main Mixed Use. It is a condition amendment and variance case. As was mentioned, this case went before Planning Commission on May 7th. And there were, the Planning Commission did recommend approval with staff staff conditions. They revised some of the conditions. And it was scheduled to go before City Council on May 11th. And there wasn't enough time for the applicant to address all of the concerns that Planning Commission had. So at that meeting, they did request a table, but we did open up the public hearing. No one was present or submitted any comments. Next slide, please. This is in Council Ward 1. The applicant in this case is LDS Partners. And I do want to mention that Parks Huff, the attorney, is on the phone, as well as Jeff Smith with Ridge Planning and Engineering, as well as Mr. Espana from Piedmont, the developer builder that's involved. So this is on 3 parcels on Main Street across from the library. The address is there, 7674, 7708, and 7776 Main Street. It's about just under 7 acres. And again, the request is to amend conditions from a previous conditional use case, and they're requesting variances to develop a mixed use neighborhood. The property is currently zoned DTRO. Future land use is urban village. Next slide, please. Here's your zoning map so you can see where we are. Again, we're across from the public library, 3 parcels, 6.7 acres. The property is bordered to the west by the railroad tracks. You've got Main Street to the east. Mason, Maine is in development to the south. And the site is impacted by 2 stream buffers, one to the rear of the property closer to the train tracks and one closer to Main Street. Next slide, please. The image on the left, so in December of 2018, CUP number 041-18 was approved, and that was a conditional use permit to allow townhomes, and there were variances that were granted at that time, variances for things like allowing front-loaded units against the railroad, stream buffer, counting towards open space, street facade requirement relief, things like that. A number of conditions that address those variances, building facade treatment, as well as cite things related to the pedestrian trail and bridge along Main Street. So in that case, they were proposing 26 townhomes, 27 single-family detached homes, and then 2 proposed commercial buildings. I don't believe that they had tenants at that time. So the request on the right, the applicant submitted they submitted a new site plan and are requesting to amend some of the conditions from that previous case. We have a new developer on board. We have a commercial tenant that is ready to go and get started on their building. The road that's at the top of the site plan here, that's Bishop Lane, that's going to continue over from Mason, Maine. You can see that they've made some changes to the road network and as well some changes to the open space. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the proposal here is for 51 single-family detached homes, and then 2 commercial buildings at Main Street. So that's 15,000 square foot of proposed office and commercial. The request is for 3 condition amendments from that previous case. One of the conditions required the site plan to be substantially similar to what was previously approved. So we want to amend that to address the current site plan. Another amendment is to, in the previous case, allowed attached townhomes, and we'd like to strike that because we're no longer, they're no longer proposing attached townhomes. And then the third amendment is one of the conditions required storefront treatment on the 2 commercial buildings. And like I said, we've got, there's a commercial tenant that is on board. It's Reich Dental. They have a couple of other locations around Metro Atlanta, and they've been working with their architect and have submitted some renderings that you'll see on another slide. And the residential treatment would apply to those buildings. The applicant is also requesting 7 new variances. There were, I believe, 9 or 10 that were granted in the previous case. So these are in addition to those. And you'll see later on in the slide or in the staff report, you could see what was granted with the previous case. The variances are to things like parking. There's some architecture related to the commercial buildings. And then one is to the setbacks. And if you see, these units are really close together, and they're requesting a side setback variance as well as a few others. Next slide, please. This slide is showing you the proposed residential architecture. On the left, you see a rendering of the alley fed units, and that's the majority of the units throughout the development. You know, that's required downtown. But in the previous case, the row of homes that are along Bishop, along the railroad, those were allowed to be front loaded. And so the renderings here on the right are showing that proposed architecture. The applicant said it's going to be a mix of materials depending on the elevation. You may have cementitious siding or a combination of siding with brick or stone accents. And Planning Commission did address porches or stoops. I do want to point out that the rendering on the left is more representative of what the development will look and feel like, with it being closer together. Since they are requesting that side setback variance, the front loaded unit renderings show a little more space side to side than what would actually be there in reality. Next slide. This is the commercial architecture. So as I mentioned, Reich Dental, they have 2 other locations and they're looking to move to Woodstock. They've been working with their architect and have been working on buildings that will function well for them. And you can see 2 renderings here, one view from Main Street and one from the new D1 entrance street. And again, most of the building does have gabled roof, which that's residential treatment as defined in our downtown code. Next slide, please. This brings us into our variances. Variance number 1 is the applicant is requesting only 1 housing type. Staff is recommending approval due to market conditions. The applicant has changed their request and now they're just proposing this 1 type of housing. And the applicant did a great job at Planning Commission of explaining that. So if you have questions about those changing market conditions, I'm sure they'd be happy to talk about those. This detached townhome is a unique product in this area. It's not something that we've seen. When you think about Mason, Maine to the south, it will feel like a continuation and therefore would provide a mix of housing types. Variance 2, the code would require 57 parking spaces based upon the use and square footage, and they are requesting 66 spaces, as you can see in the 2 parking lots behind the commercial buildings. Staff is recommending approval of this request based upon the end user's existing office needs and their knowledge of their patient load and need for parking. As we've talked about in some previous cases, the city does have lower parking minimums than some other jurisdictions in the area. We feel that by having these parking lots here, it will keep the commercial traffic in these parking lots and not have them tying up residential parking. There's also not a lot of options in this area for shared parking. Variance 3 has to do with signage, and they're asking for signage to be within 5 feet of the sidewalk clear zone. And this is based upon, if you look at the streetscape section kind of there on the right bottom side of the screen, if you take into account the right turn lane and the sidewalk location, the sign is placed for visibility. And one thing that came up was that when we were discussing another case, actually, we realized that monument signs are not permitted in DTRO. I think they're a P star in the table. And so we would ask that if you consider this variance, that you would consider changing it to a nostalgic sign, which is permitted in DTRO. That is what Mason Main has next door. We've talked to the applicant, and they are aware of this change and are okay with that. Next slide, please. Thank you. Variance 4 is the setback reduction. They're asking to reduce the rear setback where there's no alley to 5 feet and reduce the side setback for all single family lots to 0. So looking at the reduction of the rear setback request, that is just for those, it's about 20 lots numbered on the site plan 3 through 22 that back up to the alley, back up to the railroad tracks where there's no alley. Again, that was approved in a previous case. Here they are providing a larger supplemental zone. So you're going to have a nice front yard that's going to be delineated by a hedge or a fence. They've talked about that. Longer driveways, I think they're looking at 20 feet for the driveways. Something that we heard about with Mason Main is that the driveways are really, really short. I think they're about 8 feet deep. So it's a challenge to park cars in the driveway, and you need a lot of on-street parking. So here, having the longer driveways, that's something that we are supportive of here. Also, the lots and units are deeper. Regarding the side setback, staff is in support of reducing the side setback to 0, so a 0 lot line, as long as the 3-foot minimum separation and appropriate fire access is maintained. The applicant has spoken with our fire department, and they are aware of what's needed throughout the site for appropriate fire and life safety access. So you'll see in the graphic that I've created here on the right, a minimum 3-foot separation between units. And then the units are kind of grouped together in these clusters. So as long as there's a 10-foot minimum separation between those building clusters and they're grouped appropriately, I believe that the fire department was comfortable with that in order to maintain appropriate fire access. One of the things that came up at Planning Commission, and we heard a concern about maintenance and mold and things like that. The HOA for the subdivision is going to be responsible for maintenance. So maintaining the space in between the units. I believe there's going to be pea gravel in between the units. They would be maintaining the paint, the siding, all that kind of stuff. There would be appropriate access easements in between the units. And so I think staff felt comfortable with this recommendation once you take into account the appropriate separation and maintenance and easements that are there. We can go to the next slide. Variance number 5. This is for those front-loaded units. Again, the properties that are against the railroad tracks. The applicant has requested to reduce the windows and doors on the first floor to 12%. And so they're proposing here a 24-foot wide unit. So you can kind of see on the screen how it would fit in the lot. And when you take into account a 3-foot wide door, that's where that 12% comes into play. One other variance here that staff and planning commission are recommending is to allow relief from garages and carports being set back a minimum of 10 feet from the street facade. That was one of the requests that got overlooked when we were evaluating the application, and we didn't have renderings until the last week or so. So that's just another variance request that we would ask that you consider. Next slide, please. These two, number 6 and 7, relate to the commercial building. The applicant is requesting for the parapet walls to extend to 3 sides only, and you can see in the graphic, it's relating to that shorter part that's here on the right. Staff is recommending approval as shown on the elevation. According to the applicant, it's a more practical system of water removal than only using the scupper openings, and helps prevent leaves and things like that getting clogged up in the drains. And then the final variance, number 7 here, the applicant is requesting a minimum height at the build-to line of 16 feet. And again, staff recommending approval as shown on the exterior elevation. It's only that one portion of the building. Otherwise, the building height will be approximately 37 feet, which is within the height limit for this district. And I believe that the height has to do, the reduction has to do with equipment and things like that inside the building. Next slide. So this starts our recommendation. And again, DPC, which is our staff committee, we voted to recommend approval of the condition amendment and variances with conditions. And then Planning Commission heard the case on May 7th, and they voted to forward the staff recommendation with some revised conditions. So you'll see a few different colors in this, in the condition language here. So there were conditions and things that were granted in the original conditional use permit case that the applicant did not request to change. So those are in black. The DPC new language is in blue, and then any red text are the edits from Planning Commission. And I'll try to go through these quickly, but make sure that you try to be clear with them. So condition number 1 would be stating that all prior zoning conditions are void and hereby replaced in favor of these conditions of zoning. Next slide. And could you maybe make it just a little bit bigger on the screen? That way everybody can read it. Could you scroll down just slightly? We can take the heading out, is okay. Good, thank you, that's great. Nope. There we go. So condition 2 would say that the project site should be substantially similar to the one that was submitted in March by Ridge Planning, and then these site variances are granted. So again, the first handful of them were granted with the previous case, offered relief from the street facade frontage, rear alley requirement, allowing the stream buffer along Main Street to count toward open space percentage, relief from installing the sidewalk and street trees along Bishop, relief from the street standards, allowing lot trees to be placed outside the lots. 2H, allow a sign to be built within 5 feet of sidewalk. That's where I would ask if you consider this to allow that to be a nostalgic sign instead of a monument sign. 2I, allow additional parking for the commercial buildings, a max of 66 parking spaces. 2J, allow a reduction of rear setback to 5 feet for the front loaded units. Again, this is one that Planning Commission did recommend denial of this variance. 2K, allow 0-foot side setbacks with a minimum 3-foot separation throughout the development. And the remainder of the language here discusses fire department access and regulations. So the sides of the walls would be fire rated, no windows on the interior walls. And unless the separation is 10 feet or greater, the houses should be grouped and separated to allow for appropriate hose lay. And again, this is another, this variance and the one right above it are the two that Planning Commission recommended denial of the setback requests. Next slide, please. Condition 3, any building facades facing Main Street and open space areas should be treated as street facades, and the architecture will be reviewed and approved by staff. Staff added here that the proposed residential property shall be in general conformance with the renderings that we've shown you here tonight. Planning Commission added that the building material shall be brick, stone, cementitious siding, or other similar natural materials. A minimum of 30% of all residential units must feature a porch that meets the definition and requirements of the downtown code, which I believe is 8 by 5. All units must feature a porch or stoop, with the stoop having a minimum depth of 5 feet. And then front yard shall be delineated by a fence or hedge, as shown in the renderings. And then included with this condition grants the following residential architecture variances. So A, to allow only one housing type, which is single family detached. B, previously granted relief from providing habitable space for the first 10 feet behind the street facade. C, allow a reduction of required windows and doors to 12% for first floor of front loaded units. And then D, Planning Commission did add this variance request that we discussed on a previous slide about allowing relief from garages and carports being set back a minimum of 10 feet from the street facade. Next slide, please. Condition 4, the 2 commercial buildings shall front or have their primary pedestrian entrance towards either Main Street or the new D1 street. And again, architecture to be reviewed and approved by staff. And the commercial architecture should be substantially similar to what was submitted and you reviewed tonight. If there's a disagreement, the condition allows for decision to be made by council. And then granting the 2 following variances. A, to allow the minimum building height of 16 feet at the build to line. And then B, allow the parapet walls to extend 3 sides only as shown on the elevation, and requiring the HVAC units to be screened if they're visible. So I know that's a lot coming at you. The next slide does list out all of the conditions. If you go to the next slide, please, Jet. Oh, nope, sorry, there's one more here. Condition 5 relates to the future street connection. Again, these 1, 2, 3, 4 on this page were granted in the previous case. So 5 would require the future street connection sign at the northeast property line. Number 6 relates to the 10-foot sidewalk that was shown on the site plan and allows the stream buffer, or allows it to encroach into the stream buffer. It talks about the pedestrian bridge and the construction being similar to that's what the bridge that's across from the library. Number 7, open space areas to be maintained by the HOA, but the trail and bridge shall be maintained by the city. And the final condition is that a clause shall be placed in the HOA covenants restricting the number of rental units to 10%. So now I think the next slide has all the conditions listed out. And I know that that's really small on your screen, but hopefully you've been able to see it in the staff report. That concludes my presentation, sir.
Are there any questions for Nuwana?
I got one.
Yes, sir.
Hey, real quick, is the reason they're asking for those 5-foot setbacks on the railroad side because they said they made the driveways longer? Is that the reason is that what's happening? Can you clarify that?
Yeah, they did talk about, being impacted by the stream and the railroad in their site, but I think these are a longer product, like a deeper product. So it would sit back further on the lot. And then when you take into account the longer driveway and the supplemental zone that's required downtown, I think it pushes it back.
Anybody else?
And just to confirm, you did say that the fire department reviewed this. I mean, 3 buildings that are 3 feet apart seem awfully close together to have to service that.
Yes, sir. Both at, we have our staff committee where the applicant meets with different departments, engineering, fire, planning, building. So we did talk about it there. And then I believe that the applicant has had separate conversations, as a follow-up with Deputy Fire Marshal Stilson about this project and what would be required.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, if there's nothing else, Arts Hub is on the line.
Good evening. I appreciate y'all handling this Zoom, and certainly awkward for me, but I will try to do the best I can in relaying the project to you. And Ms. Ray did an excellent job describing the request. This property was zoned by LDS, Jeff Smith. You're very familiar with him. In 2018, it had a mixture of attached townhomes and detached homes. It also had 2 commercial pad sites out front on Main Street. And he's been marketing the property ever since. It's an assembly, and he's been keeping the assemblage together. And it's been a lot of work over the last 2 years, almost 2 years, to keep the assembly together. And unfortunately, the market has not embraced the combination of detached and attached units that he had that's zoned. And obviously, as you know, a project that's zoned with permitted uses is very, very enticing to builders because they don't need anything. But this mixture did not have the reception. But about 6-8 months ago, he got strong interest for building the 2 commercial pad sites, and Jeff was very excited about having the commercial components being built, knowing that in the past it's always been one of the things that sometimes the commercial lags. But this is the case where the commercial came online, and then Jeff started trying to get a product in the residential, because the project has to be developed at one time. So he brought Piedmont Residential in, and they wanted to build a product that's not in the city, and it is a sometimes referred to as was mentioned in the staff presentation as a detached townhome. So instead of a mixture of attached and detached, everything is detached. But yes, to Mr. Johnston's point, it is very close. It's 3-foot separation, but we work with the fire department and understand what they need in terms of creating gaps at certain intervals so that they've got the hose lay they need, the fire rating on the walls. And so it allows the development of this product that Piedmont Residential's developed for this area. And Jeff is very excited about bringing this together. The commercial buildings, as you saw, were very attractive and would be a great addition for employment and services for the city of Woodstock residents. And the residential behind will be blended in seamlessly as your code tries to encourage with the development to the south. And that leads me to talk about variances, the 2 variances that the Planning Commission did not recommend, which is variance number 2, J and K. We ask that you approve those 2 variances that were recommended by your staff, but not recommended by the Planning Commission. And both of those variances go to the heart of the site plan that, quite frankly, is condition number 1, which is that we be developed similar to the site plan that's submitted. It allows the road structure that ties into the Mason Main project to the south to be continuous. And it allows the product that we have here that we think would be very complementary to the other projects close by and throughout the city. The question was asked, yes, the setback for those homes that back up to the railroad track, we're pushing those back because we've got a the complaining. If you can go to the site plan, if I don't know if the presentation can go back to the site plan, you can actually see how the other units are right up on the units in the existing development are right up on the street. We're going to push these back, I believe, 20 feet. So there'll be plenty of parking. And then, so that pushes it back. We have some elements on the front of those units that you saw with the garages and the porches over the garages to make them attractive. But this is something we work very hard with your staff on, both your fire department and all your staff, to get the planning committee, the DPC recommendation for approval. And I think I just didn't do a good enough job in describing to the planning commission that those two variances were integral to the site plan that was before them and the product that was before them. So, we would ask that you approve this with the planning commission, with the staff recommendation, with those two additional recommendations of J and K being included in your approval. Also, as number 3 condition, which is up on your board here, we would ask that you add 3D, but that you not have a requirement that 30% of the units have the porches as defined by the development code. We will have porches and stoops and such, but they just want to be able to have some flexibility. You do have the rendering that shows the streetscape of the product that faces the street with the rear loaded, alley loaded product, and you can see how attractive it is. And those are conditions of the zoning, that those be consistent with the architecture we presented to you, both residential and commercial. So this is an opportunity for this development to come in to being. It is an opportunity for the downtown code to keep the grid streets intact and moving forward. It's an opportunity for the commercial component to be built. And as I said, this is one where we've got an actual commercial builder that's ready to come out of the ground with these buildings. They're very attractive and will make a great example of how you can have a mixture of commercial and residential coming forward at one time. And the product is something that the city doesn't have. And the fact that this is already zoned for townhomes, to be able to come in and say, we're going to separate them out. Yes, they're close, but they do meet your fire code. They will be maintained by the homeowners association. And throughout the process, we've tried to respond to all the staff questions and concerns, and we're very glad that they recommend approval. So I've got Jeff on the line also, if you've got specific questions for him, and the principal for Piedmont Residential, which is the home builder, which is a local company, is also on the line, can answer specific questions you may
have. So am I understand that all the exterior doors are 3 feet wide? Is it not difficult to get their stuff in their house? I mean, most houses have a 4-foot door and 3 feet door. I'm just curious. That really doesn't have anything to do with my decision, but it caught my attention. And it's not a gotcha question. It was
well, it is a gotcha for me. It's not an item I've looked at. Let me see if I can get a response. Yeah.
Parks. This is JD Espana, the owner of Piedmont Residential. Front doors for all residential buildings or houses we've ever built, and I've been in the business for 26 years, are 3 foot wide. That's code. That's not a people do larger doors usually on very high-end homes, and that's usually getting into more of a double door, which would be 2 4-foot doors, make it 8 foot wide. But on a typical single family residential, it's a 3 foot wide front door.
Okay, that was just a question.
If Jeff Smith is on the line and he wishes to talk, we need him to raise his hand so we can tell which Jeff Smith is on our screen so we can unmute him. Since we have two Jeff Smiths. Okay, Jeff, you're unmuted if you needed to say anything.
Okay, no, thanks. I did not have anything else to add. I think JD answered that. But obviously, if there's any other questions that I can help with, I'd love to help.
All right, council, do you have any questions? Anybody?
I do not.
I do not. I like the commercial piece. It's fine with the 3-foot clearance, but we did have townhomes approved already there anyway. So it's kind of like a tit for tat if we want to have townhomes or 3-foot clearance. I mean, so I do like the commercial, and I'm glad to see commercial going that far north on Main. So, I mean, it's a tight piece of property if you ever walked it. And I think me and Colin actually went down there and met with the homeowners about a previous issue a while back. They've got a stream that kind of runs through the property. You got to kind of fight to build anything on. So it's kind of a tough piece to build on if you look at it. In my opinion, I'm not a builder, but it just seems like that creek is kind of causes the property to be segmented to where you're going to have to push the homes to get the commercial in a tighter space.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you to the applicants for their hard work, and staff. Nuwana, I appreciate it. Now we'll entertain discussion and/or motions.
I make a motion to approve with staff's recommendations.
Second.
To clarify, that was Warren. To clarify, that includes the nostalgic sign, right, on 2H
Yes.
instead of a monument. Okay, thanks.
All right, we have a motion and then Warren second. Any more discussion?
As a Brian second.
Oh, sorry, Brian.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brian. I trusted Rob to know. Anybody else? All right, roll call vote. Ward 1.
Aye.
2.
Aye.
3.
Aye.
4.
Aye.
5. Brian?
Or Warren.
Brian, are you there?
Hey, could you hear me? Aye.
Okay, thank you. Ward 6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Thanks, everybody.
May I ask I'm sorry, I know you guys voted. May I ask for clarification? Does that include the items that Planning Commission added?
That was not in the motion.
So it was just the staff recommendation.
Like, which one are you talking about?
The items in red here on the screen related to building materials, the minimum of the 30% porch, and then 3D that related to relief from garages and carports being set back. The red is what Planning Commission added. And from your motion, it sounded like it was just the staff.
Well, 2 of the Planning Commission restrictions are denying the setback. So I'm gonna assume, but Tracy can say it for herself, she didn't want to deny the setbacks. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
All right, Brian, are you still fine with that second?
Yes, I am.
Eldon, do we need to have another vote for clarification?
No, I think Tracy's motion was clear that she was asking that it be approved with staff recommendations, which did not include the Planning Commission recommendations.
Okay, but Tracy, I'm understanding that you actually wanted to include Planning Commission. Is that right?
No, well, if we need to, I don't want to do I don't want to recommend denial of the setbacks, but if we need the things in red, I missed that, so. I
Okay,
want to
that's,
say, if you need those things in red, let me know.
So you want to include what they approved, but not the things that they denied?
Correct.
Okay.
Is that
all
good
right,
with
that's
you,
why I
Brian?
was asking for clarification on that. Brian, you
That's
still
fine
good?
with me.
Okay.
What about the now that needs to be clarified, I think, are you talking about you're not approving a minimum of 30% of all residential units must feature a porch that meets the definitions and requirements of the downtown code?
It sounded like you just said staff, in my opinion. Our motion was staff
did say
recommendations.
staff. Yes.
It
I
wasn't
did say
staff and
recommendations.
yeah.
So I'm
No.
fine with staff recommendations.
Can I ask that you do include variance 3D or item 3D that allows relief from garages and carports being set back a minimum of 10 feet from street facade?
Okay, yes, I can, 3D, yes, approval.
All right, that's the motion. Brian, you still good?
I'm still good.
Okay, Eldon, do we need to revote?
Yes, I would like to see a revote on that.
Okay, roll call vote, Ward 1.
Aye.
2.
Aye.
3.
Aye.
4.
Aye.
5.
Aye.
6.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 6-0. Nuwana, you got what you need, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Item 5-3 is public hearing, first reading for Chapter 11 Billboard Standards Text Amendment. Dakota, I assume you're on the line?
Yes, sir, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay.
Can we go to the next slide for me, please, Jeff? Thank you. And yes, so this is the Billboard Sign Standards Text Amendment. If we'll go to the following slide, I'll give just a quick overview or just note a few points here for you. We are proposing this amendment to the existing standards and application requirements, and I've done some pretty extensive research here on some different ordinances in the surrounding cities and counties, and then also included some diagrams just to clarify a few points. So I'll point those out when we get to those slides. And then internally, I did want to mention that staff has done some things to our process internally as far as reviewing the billboard applications. So we have created some checklists and timelines and graphics to help us quicken the application process and kind of get through those as soon as we get them. We are on kind of a very specific timeline that I'll talk about in a moment. So we've done those things internally to get us through that. And then the red lines and the draft ordinance that is in your agenda packet, there are a few points that have been revised by legal since then. And so I'll go over those. Legal did review this at first, I believe, on the 7th, and that was included in your agenda packet. And then on the 10th, just made a few more minor changes for clarification. So we do ask that if you would like to approve this ordinance, you approve it with those legal changes. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and so this is the first, that first amendment that was done, or I'm sorry, reviewed by legal, included the addition of this definition of distance. This is something that when we talked to Leslie about it, it's something that we would like to be included in Chapter 2 and definitions overall, or at least for the billboard sign standards and the regular Chapter 6 sign standards section. But without having advertised for Chapter 2 and not seeing other changes to that chapter as of yet, we wanted to make sure it got in here into this ordinance for right now. And then on the 10th, it was revised to make sure that it includes just this chapter for right now. So it will cross out the land development ordinance and just specifically say this chapter. Next slide, please. Okay, so 21.1.8 is the billboard sign requirements. These three things include a lot of distances between billboards, other billboards, or any other items in the city. So the first being number 6, this discusses the distance between one billboard and another billboard. So if an applicant proposes a new billboard addition, it needs to be a certain amount of feet from an existing billboard. We have recommended to increase this distance from 1,000 feet to 1,500 feet. And then on number 7, this discusses the distances between a proposed billboard and then any parcel or property that is zoned for a category allowing single family or multifamily. And the change to note here is that currently, as the ordinance stands, the billboard, that distance requirement is just for single family residential only. So now we've taken it further to include anything that is zoned for multifamily as well. And this distance was also changed from 500 feet to 1,000 feet. So that is the distance requirement on number 7. On number 8, this is the distance between a proposed billboard sign and different things like public parks, public spaces, scenic areas. When I was doing my research, I did see some other local municipalities that identified specific things for these distances. I have some examples down here at the bottom, and I'm not sure if you can see them. But for example, Athens has distances from airport clear zones, and Atlanta had distances between historic districts and historic buildings. So here we thought it would be a great idea to include our Green Prints trail segment to keep that 500-foot distance between that. And specifically anything that is completed or funded or with the design plans underway. Okay, and I believe we can go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so and furthermore, in the billboard sign requirements section, this says that billboard signs are limited to a height of 50 feet above the grade of 575, measured from the crown of the nearest adjacent travel lane of I-575. So this was more of a point of clarification, really, and I have a graphic here below that hopefully explains kind of our intent and specifically what subsection 9 will say. So it does not matter at a point of installation of a billboard, no matter where that grade is at the point of installation, it's always in relation, the height of 50 feet is always in relation to the crown of the nearest travel lane of 575. All right, and next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so we are on to 21.2.1, and this is regarding permitting and procedures. So anything that needs to be included with application documents for us to review. This clarifies and kind of further requires someone to submit surveys or drawings, accurate drawings to scale that are prepared by a licensed and registered engineer. This ultimately will help us confirm those distances that we were just talking about and make sure everything adds up there. We like to confirm them ourselves, but it definitely helps that it's not just any kind of sketch showing kind of a drawn out line and distance like we've seen in the past. It makes sure that these are specifically done by an engineer and those distances really can be confirmed up front. And then on D, subsection D, this really clarifies the site distance diagram requirement. This is a requirement that we've had in the code and we have currently in the code section, but we wanted to really confirm what we mean by that so that it makes our review process a little bit easier and a little bit more clear. So now we do require site distance diagrams in compliance with AASHTO standards for site distance diagrams. And you can see here down at the bottom, this is just a page out of the AASHTO book that shows some of those diagrams. Okay, on to the next slide, please. Great. So again, with permits and procedures section, this is one that was revised by legal that is not in your agenda packet. Let me kind of zoom in on mine here on my screen. So the top section that you see there, it is in red. This is what you have in your agenda packet. This was something that was added during the first revision on the 7th. So this was added by staff and revised on the 7th. This is a section that we think is necessary to keep us on that specific timeline that we already have outlined in the ordinance. So within these response timelines, we have staff has 30 days to review an application. We have a certain amount of time to send letters out, whether it's denied or approved. If it is denied, then that applicant has a matter of 10 days to initiate an appeal process, and so on and so forth. So what we are aiming to do here, the intent of this subsection, is to have the applicant stay on that timeline of appeal instead of not appealing and trying to resubmit or make changes to that same application, or continue to submit over and over again for the same proposed billboard sign on the same property. That just kind of defeats the purpose of that whole timeline that we have in place here. And this is one of the graphics that I wanted to point out, kind of a timeline that we've set for ourselves in the diagram, just to make it easier for us to make sure that we stay on these deadlines and we don't miss anything internally. All right, and that is my last slide. I know I kind of covered a lot here, but I'm willing to take any questions. And again, I will say that if you decide to approve this, we would ask that you approve it with those 2 legal changes. And I'm just remembering that, Jeff, if you would, for me, go up 2 slides. One more, please. There we go. On number 8, this was something that I had forgotten about, that actually one of our planning commissioners pointed out that nobody caught. It is on number 8. It says that no billboard sign shall be located with 500 feet. It should say within. That is just a minor typo there. We would like clarified now if we could. So just those 3 changes along with an approval is what we would recommend.
Any questions for Dakota? All right, this is a public hearing. If Rob or Brantley can let me know if anybody's out in the chambers.
Nobody's out there.
Nobody's out there? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and open up for discussion and or motions.
I'd make a motion to approve with the 2 legal changes as requested, and with the change of the word with in item 8 to within.
Second.
Right. Colin motion, and who was
David
the
second.
David?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Ward 1.
Aye.
2.
Aye.
3.
Aye.
4.
Aye.
5.
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Item 6, under new business, number 1 is the IGA for the city of Mountain Park. Obviously, Jeff is not going to do it. Cody is moving down by me, so I'll move over.
Hi, Mayor and Council. This is just a pretty straightforward IGA. It's with the city of Mountain Park, and it allows them to piggyback on our paving contract. If you have any specific questions, Rob Hogan is also available to answer any technical questions.
Anybody have anything?
No.
No? Okay, thank you. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I heard a Tracy second, did I?
David motion, Tracy or Warren
Yeah.
second.
I think I heard Tracy first. All right, any further discussion? Roll call, Ward 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Good job, Dakota. Before, anyway, I'm sorry. Item 8 are the minutes approval from the June 8th, 2020 regular council meeting. Are there any changes or corrections needed? Having heard none, I'll entertain a motion.
You have a motion to approve?
Second.
Tracy and David?
Yes, sir.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call, Ward 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5. Brian, you there?
Aye. Can you hear me?
6?
Aye.
Yeah, 6.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. All right, the only thing I have to say is we do not have an executive session for obvious reasons mostly. And with that thought in mind, keep your prayers going and we'll keep y'all updated. Cody, you or Rob are having anything? Rob, if you'll take the podium.
Yes, sir. We did want to notify council per emergency procurement policy that we had a failure of a pump on the Weatherstone pump station. That's going to require a replacement pump that will cost $51,984.90. And we'll need to move forward with that as an emergency procurement. And according to that policy, we're providing notice to council tonight. And there will be a scope change on next week's council agenda addressing it as well, because this particular pump station already has a capital project budgeted for this year. It did not include this particular pump in that capital project, but the scope change would make that happen with your approval.
Did I understand you, Rob, to say that it's 51,000, so it needs council approval?
It will, we'll bring that back to you for specific approval, but
Okay.
we're notifying you of the emergency procurement.
All right. All right. Thank you. Anything else? Anything else, Rob?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. If council has anything before we close? No? All right, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
You have a motion to adjourn.
And a second.
Again.
And a Collins second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, Ward 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Good night. We'll see you next week on the other side.
Hey, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Do one of y'all have a pen?